One is considered to be Fritz Lang's magnum opus, the other an American attempt to not stray too far from the path. They Remade It.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of They Remade It. I'm your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
Today, with the onset of spring, it's every day is lovelier than the last. More bees are flying into my windows and stuff. I'm just loving it.
You know, that's what I was just about to say. I was about to say, you know what? Now it's time for the updated seasonal report that we always give.
Yeah.
The weather outside is something.
The weather outside is, oh God, bees!
You know what? It's been really crazy here, so I can't even talk. It's just been rain or cold or hot, so.
Yeah, a little bit here too.
It's all over the place, but
that's not important because who even knows in this state of redacted?
It doesn't even matter. We're both inside.
Yeah, exactly. I have a fan going.
We're protected from the elements. So
on the note of being inside, what you been watching while inside?
I was gonna ask you the same thing, so that you go first.
Alrighty, I can go first then. My list is pretty short.
Mine is too, but either way.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been able, or just haven't had the inclination lately to go out and see a lot of stuff. But you know, you and I even talked about it beforehand. But we've just been catching up on all the big things that have been happening, but by just looking up basically the Spark Notes online. Like we did that for both Avengers Endgame and Game of Thrones, which have both come out recently.
Yeah, I've mentioned it on the show before. I don't have much attachment to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've seen Iron Man, Avengers, and Thor, and I didn't like Thor. So that is... Oh, and I saw Guardians, and I liked Guardians. But that's it. Like, everything else I haven't even touched or seen, so I was curious, and I was like, I'm not going to go see Endgame, or at least if I do, it'll be forever from now, so I might as well look up what happens, because I was curious.
Yeah, and like I'm in a similar boat. Like, I've seen most of the films. I think a lot of them are fine, but I've always thought the Avengers movies kind of sucked. So, and from what I've read up on it, I don't think I'd missed out on anything. I'll look up the clips later when they come out, and I'll be fine.
Yeah, I guess that's just the type of people we are. You know, when I was in elementary school... I used to be a part of this Book of the Month club where they would send you Scooby-Doo books. They would send you one Scooby-Doo mystery book in the mail a month. And I was the type of kid who would read for 3 chapters, but then I flipped to the end to see how the mystery was solved. And after I learned, I would still read the book most of the times. I just really wanted to know what happened. I don't really have that spoiler mentality about most things. There's a few things I have, but about most things, I just don't care.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I just don't have the patience at this point.
Yeah, there is too much media. That's official. So there's a lot of things to be watching.
Yeah, that's at least been my front on new stuff that's come out. I have watched a couple things though. I watched what was it called? Oh yeah, Highwaymen. That's the new Netflix film. It's actually centered on... Have you heard about that one?
No. I've actually been on Netflix fairly recently, and I haven't even seen it.
It's about the guys... Actually stars Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson.
Oh,
it's
God.
About... It's better than it sounds. But it's about the two former Texas Rangers that were re-enlisted to track down Bonnie and Clyde, actually.
Oh, okay.
And subsequently, take down. But yeah, I thought it was actually really, really cool. I also just didn't know the story of Bonnie and Clyde that well. For some reason, I always thought they were just kind of like rambunctious, like robbers and that sort of thing. But like, as it turns out, Bonnie killed like 6 or 7 people. So it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So it was cool, just good shooting and everything. Like, I'm always a fan of that kind of 1930s America aesthetic. I think it's done very well when, done well. And it actually had kind of a funny thought in it. It's that, Kevin Costner's character obviously is, long past, kind of long past his prime type lawbringer character and everything. It's like, oh, he's, struggling to make it through into the modern world with this old kind of Western heroic mindset. And the way I was thinking about it was like, we see this character trope so often. I kind of almost like to see, situations in which we actually see them in their prime. But I thought back on it, I was like, Kevin Costner literally did that, though. That's literally just his whole acting career. Like, from like early on in his career, we've seen him go from, the young in his prime, either Western or just like lawbringer type character, and literally have seen him through the ages age into the, now past his prime, tired of it all, like lawbringer character. It's actually kind of cool to think about. Because he's in a few things nowadays, like and he's in this one show, Yellowstone, where he plays basically the same thing.
I actually had a conversation about Kevin Costner, including Yellowstone, just a couple of days ago.
Oh.
Which I have not seen Yellowstone. It was more so about Kevin Costner's career. Because maybe I'll bookmark this, because I like Woody Harrelson just fine, but that Kevin Costner thing is a hard pill for me to swallow, because I have not seen a single thing of his that I've liked at all.
I think
so.
He does his character pretty well in Highwaymen. Like he's a pretty generic character, but like, he's not just, like that's kind of the point of him. He literally is just meant to be a hard, stoic former Texas Ranger type. So, but it is really cool if only, like, and Woody Harrelson's hilarious as always.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I watched that one, and then I cannot remember the other one I watched. I really think I only watched 2 in the last couple of weeks, and it's not coming to me.
You got to write these down like I do.
Yeah. Oh, Robots. The old
animated movie.
Yep.
The internet's been freaking out about that recently. Maybe I got to go back and watch that, because I remember not liking it as a kid.
I thought it was decent. Like it's mostly just like, Robin Williams is always a joy.
Yeah.
God rest.
Yeah, I'll have to go back to it. I think I remember Al Roker being in it as like a mailbox or something. So
I think I know. Fucking dang it! I've lost his name. Directed Blazing Saddles.
Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks plays a character.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, he plays Big Weld, the big man. Dude. There really is not a whole lot of plot to it, and it really is just the kind of, Pixar's Cars situation where even when you start to think about the world a little bit more deeply, the whole concept kind of falls apart. Where it's like there's an entire concept where, the whole plot of it, the whole driving plot is that you can't get like older, poor bots can't like afford modern upgrades and everything. They just have to keep repairing themselves with junk. But then, like on the surface, it's like, okay, maybe that's like an allegory, just rich versus poor. But then there's another thing where, like, once they get really old, they might get like eaten up by these street sweeper things that collect scrap. I'm like, okay, that's kind of getting a little weird now for parallels. It's like, is this meant to be like a parallel for? It's meant to be a parallel for just like fashion and everything, because everything they have is just like seems purely cosmetic.
What about when those street sweepers get old? What happens to them?
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, because it's hard to tell. It's like they're a little, sentient like light posts and everything, but the street sweepers don't appear to be sentient. Or it's like, where is the line?
It's like in Cars, those cow cars that they go out. Yeah, the tractors they go out and tip is like, what are those?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's really hackneyed at this point, but it really is kind of almost like a Goofy Pluto situation. So,
yep, yeah, that's basically exactly what Robots is. And plus, the plot is very insubstantial. It's the kind of thing where the main characters don't even encounter the main villain until right near the end.
So cats don't dance, but with robots.
Yeah, actually, that's actually shockingly accurate when you think about it. Yeah, I think that's the extent of what I've been watching.
All right. Now I'll go into mine real quick.
Go right ahead.
I saw Freddy vs. Jason. Hadn't seen it in a very long time.
Oh.
It's fine. That's it. I mean, it's not like some great big achievement. Most reviews I see are like, it's got a lot of annoying teenage characters, but the fighting was okay. And I was like, have you ever seen a horror movie ever? That's kind of the deal. Like, that's kind of what you're getting into when you watch a horror film, or most horror.
Especially the one that posits itself as being one great horror character versus another great horror character. It's like, yeah, the fight's gonna be cool, but the characters are gonna suck.
Yeah. I don't know. But while I was watching it, it reminded me of the horror movie version of The Expendables, which was... I don't even... it was teased like 6 or 7 years ago, like, we're going to make The Expendables, but for horror movies. And I looked it up because I was like, I haven't heard about that project in a really long time. What happened with it? And from the looks of it, I think it was canceled. But I remember being excited about that when I heard it, because even though I had seen The Expendables at the time, for some reason when I heard horror movie Expendables, I was like, oh, it's going to be like a Suicide Squad thing with like Freddy Krueger and the Leprechaun and whatever fight Carrie. They're all going to be fighting somebody. But
just from your description alone, nothing could live up to that. Like, but nothing they would ever make would ever be that cool.
Yeah, in reality, it was more close to what the actual Expendables is, where it's like actors known for horror being on a team. So it'd be like Robert Englund and Jamie Lee Curtis and Bruce Campbell all on a team, which doesn't appeal to me as much, but I guess that doesn't matter because the project didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, in fact, that kind of sounds dull as dirt. It's like, I was kind of think like, yeah, I can't. Surely some of the most memorable characters from a horror movie aren't going to be anyone other than the main villains. Like, obviously Jamie Lee Curtis and everything, but fucking, can anyone like completely unprompted name Jamie Lee Curtis's character in Halloween? Just like without looking it up?
I mean, we can, but
I can't.
Oh, Laurie Strode. But I'm also a horror movie fan, so I guess that depends.
Exactly. It's like, but then, even with the Expendables, it's like, Sylvester Stallone. Oh, he was Rambo. Oh, Jason Statham. Oh, he was the guy in like fucking everything.
Yeah. They were more so just like famous horror movie actors as they could get. Like Jamie Lee Curtis was in Halloween, but she's also been in other horror movie things too. And it's like, oh, well, she's a scream queen. Bruce Campbell was Ash in The Living Dead, and Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. So they were just... It was more like real Expendables, where they were going to get horror movie actors to be on a team and do something.
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying. But it just on its own just kind of sounds like, whatever.
Yeah. Again, it didn't go anywhere, cool. So what are you going to do?
Yeah. It'd be kind of cool if they got, like, all the technical people behind it for that sort of thing. Like, they got the big greats of, the best, makeup artist, the best practical effects artist, the best
Tom Savini.
Yeah.
What's he gonna do?
No, I mean not like in the thing, but just like all of them coming together to make the best made horror film.
Okay, I see what you...
Not literally fucking them being on screen.
It's John Campbell. Tom Savini. John Williams. They're all together at last.
Oh my god. But yeah. So, I mean, interesting concept at least.
So I also saw Escape Room, which is the horror movie that came out, I think, at the end of last year, like November, October, around that time.
So, okay. See, like, that's the thing I've been meaning to complain about. Didn't like a couple of those like come out at once or something? Because I saw different posters with different titles, like a couple random times, and I'm like, wasn't this one movie this other movie? And I just did not know what was going on.
For Escape Room?
Like, I think there's more than one escape room centered horror movie out right now.
Right now? I have no...
that came out around the same time very recently.
I guess it's possible.
Yeah,
The escape room that I watched is the only one I know about, and it's the only one I saw trailers for. So
yeah,
I'm under the impression that it was the big one at the very least, if there were multiple. But
yeah. One of them was bigger than the other ones. I know that much.
yeah, I believe I saw that one. Otherwise, I don't know what happened.
Is that the one where the first room they're in like catches fire?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's the one. I know there's like one other one that's like almost like not a student film, but it's more of an indie film.
Huh. Well, I mean I guess that's not an indie film. I was gonna say the whole thing just screams Cube. It's basically just Cube,
Yeah,
is what it is.
yeah.
But
Was
with
pretty
more
cool.
design because it's like supposed to be an escape room, so the rooms aren't just boxes with puzzles; they're
Right.
actual environments. Um, all I have to say about that is I thought it was really cool. I thought it was well done, had good setup. The sets were fantastic.
Hmm.
The one problem I had is that the writing at the very beginning of the film, before they actually get to the escape room and the plot happens, the writing is horrendous. Characters just like outright state their personalities, and it's awful. It's terrible.
The classic.
Like the shy girl is sitting in class and the teacher is talking about the observer effect in quantum mechanics, and he's like, does anyone know what this theory is called? And she goes to raise her hand a little bit and then puts it down, and he like frowns and shakes his head, and then he goes on to explain it, and then after class he's like, you're still not ready to talk, huh? It's like that for 10 minutes. It's horrible.
Jesus Christ.
But it gets a lot, even the writing gets better, so I don't know what was up with the first 10 minutes of that movie. um
And just gotta get the really basic stuff out of the way, and they were just like, fuck it.
I guess. um and the ending I wasn't really expecting either. I thought it was going to be a stock they think they're free, but then you see they're still in the escape room or something. That is like such a horror movie thing to do, so I thought that would be it. But there was a little bit of that, but it was actually a lot more complex, and there was almost like an action movie element to the very ending, and I was like, that's cool.
Ooh, cool.
That's cool. I like that. So
I think I
overall,
remember.
I actually like the film.
I think I remember like seeing a plot synopsis of it at one point, so I think I know what happens. But yeah, I won't. I would say won't spoil it for anyone else's sake. I guess
That's fair.
we have another movie to spoil,
That's true.
or two. Well, one actually. When you think about it.
Lastly, I have one last thing that I'm doing, or that I watched. In my best picture sprint, I managed to watch one more. I really got to pick up the pace here if I want to make it by the end of the year. But
Yeah, seriously.
we're already a third of the way through the year at this point.
Oh God.
But I watched The Sting.
I don't know that one.
Robert Redford. I'm blanking on any other actors' names. It's like it's like a crime movie. There's like mob elements to it, not Godfather level, but like gangs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about one con that's being pulled as like a form of revenge on this one gang leader for crimes that he commits in like the first 20 minutes of the film. Yeah, really complex. It's like setting up fake environments to trick him, like a fake gambling parlor to get his money. It's very complex, and it's a lot of fun to go through it. And the main theme of the movie is like a reorchestration of The Entertainer. So that's fun because I really like that piece.
Huh. That's an interesting concept.
I actually think Marvin Hamlish is the one who did the recomposition of it. And they have like
What's up with
title. Sorry.
What? Well, I was just gonna say, it's like, what's up with Robert Redford doing like robbery movies lately?
Lately? I don't know.
Like
I
he
don't
did
know.
that one, and then there's like another one that I saw a trailer for earlier. It was called The Old Man with the Gun.
I don't know what that is. Is it like Hobo with a Shotgun?
It feels actually quite the opposite. It's like the premise of it's some just older guy who's apparently like a career criminal, and the whole premise of it is he robs banks by walking in, being very polite and just telling the teller lady, it's like, excuse me, ma'am, this is a robbery. I have a gun. Please hand me over the money and we can just go about our day. And then they do, and he just kind of walks out. And the whole thing of it is like he ends up meeting a woman like while casually escaping from from his recent robbery. And I think it centers on that and just like expands on his life story.
That sounds really pleasant.
I think it's meant to be based on a real guy.
That's even more pleasant. That's wholesome.
Yeah.
That's really wholesome.
I think it's also got Danny Glover in it as one of his friends.
Well,
yeah, I need to go back and watch that. That one looks really cool.
I'll have to look for it. But the last thing I'm going to say about I think you need to see this movie, even if you don't like it. It is really stylized. I mean,
from your description, it sounds like, Ocean's 11, but with Robert Redford, which sounds incredible. I fucking love Robert Redford.
I guess to a degree, it's not nearly as fast-paced because there's a lot of setup and there's, like, intense poker scenes that'll last 10 to 15 minutes. It's a lot slower than any of the Ocean's movies, remake, original, otherwise.
Don't worry, I like slow balls.
Yeah, and they have, the opening to the Cheers television show?
Yeah.
Where there are those nice paintings with the music playing over the background. Mm-hmm. They have title cards for, like, chapters of the movie that are done in that art style. Like, there will be a painting, and at the top it'll say, Chapter 4, The Setup, or something like that. I like it. It's really nice, the way they designed it.
And this is kind of, like, elements of, like, Ocean's 11 plus, like, Wes Anderson. It's like, this sounds fun.
Yeah. I believe it was the Best Picture winner in 1974, which...
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I thought this was like a newer one.
Oh, no.
Okay. Yeah. That makes more sense. That's even better than it's Robert Redford in his prime.
Yeah, this was actually, I think it was the Best Picture winner the year after The Godfather won Best Picture.
Wow.
So it was 2 mob movies back to back, and then Godfather Part 2 won as well later, so... The 70s were rife with those.
It's almost like it was a theme. Oh, the 70s.
But that's all I've been watching.
Well then. Sounds nice. I definitely need to look that one up later.
Yep. I guess we need to, with that being said, with us both being done, we need to move on to the plot then.
Yeah, it's into the sort of mob movie.
To a degree, there's a mob in it. Them.
Yeah. In M.
You got me. Time to get started. Alright, so both of these films are called M, just the letter M, and the 1951 version is almost a direct remake of the 1931 version, so after the first plot, I'm just going to note some key differences, and then we'll go straight into the full circle from there.
Can be some short differences, I wager.
Oh, yeah. But, starting off, 1931... Firstly, this film was directed by Fritz Lang, known for Contempt and Metropolis mainly, outside of this. Now we're off to the races. In Berlin, Germany, a young girl named Elsie Beckman is the most recent in a string of child-centric murders, and the entire city is in an uproar. Right before the most recent killing, the murderer, named Hans Beckert and played by Peter Lorre, purchases a balloon for the young girl from a blind man, played by Georges Jean, while he whistles Edvard Grieg's In the Hall of the Mountain King. Police, led by Inspector Carl Lohman, played by Otto Wernicke, spread out to do searches in the city. Beckert sends a taunting letter to a newspaper threatening more murders, and the police begin to perform raids on known gang hideouts. A gang leader known as Der Schranker, the safecracker, played by Gustav Grungens, is tired of the frequent raids and decides that something must be done about this serial killer. They use the Beggars Union to stake out the city, lying in wait to catch him in the act, while the police stake out Beckert's room. Eventually, Beckert spies a girl on the street and begins to chat her up, taking her away whilst whistling in the Hall of the Mountain King again. The blind merchant hears this, recognizes it, and tells a nearby man about the situation. Not wanting to lose him, this man brands him with a chalk M for mortar, murderer in German, on the back of Beckert's suit. This leads to numerous beggars following him. Beckert notices this and hides out in an office building. The beggars call their Schranker, and he organizes a raid of this building. They incapacitate guards and run through the building, with one individual hearing noise in the attic. He informs Der Schranker, and as numerous gang members flood to the attic, one of the guards pulls the silent alarm, alerting the police. The gang flees the building after having caught Beckert in one of the rooms up in the attic, and the police show up just in time to catch a straggler named Franz, who later at the police station talks to them and, through coaxing, spills the beans about where they are holding him. A distillery. At the distillery, a kangaroo court is being held, with citizen and crooks alike shouting for Beckert's head. His mob-appointed lawyer lets him plead his case, basically with him stating that he needs to kill and can't help himself. The lawyer informs the crowd that he must be handed over to the state for psychological and mental help, and essentially stalls the mob long enough for the police to arrive and apprehend Beckert. The film ends in a courtroom with grieving mothers stating that nothing will bring their children back and that kids must be watched more carefully by their parents.
PSA.
PSA, the more you know, as they say. And now, moving on to 1951's version of M, which is directed by Joseph Losey. This film is literally the same exact plot as the 1931 version with a few differences.
But in America.
Yes, all Americanized. For one, this film takes place in LA instead of Berlin. The killer, now played by David Wayne under the name Martin Harrow instead of Beckert, and instead of whistling Edvard Grieg's in the Hall of the Mountain King, he now whistles something. Finally, the last large difference is that the film ends after Dan Langley, Harrow's mob-appointed attorney, played by Luther Adler, is shot by mob boss Charlie Marshall, played by Martin Gable. This means that there is no short court scene with grieving mothers at the end of this picture. And that's it. That's really it.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, like, he didn't whistle it in the 51 version. He literally carried around, like, a fife.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Like a fucking weirdo.
He played it on, like, a fife or a I guess that's kind of interesting. It's almost like a Pied Piper situation, which I hadn't thought about.
I guess, yeah.
But we can get into that later.
Psychoanalysis, woo!
And now I guess we'll go into full circle and prepare yourself. It's not huge, but there's a lot more than last time. Okay, so for 1931's M, there is nothing. Probably because we haven't done a German film before, and by some strange coincidence, we haven't touched anything with Peter Lorre in it up to this point, though there's a few that I have pegged in the future. So nothing for the German M. For 1951's American M, however, we have Karen Morley, who was Mrs. Coster in M and played Poppy in 1932's Scarface. That's a huge character.
Yeah. Holy crap!
Huge character.
I thought I recognized her.
We have Jack Perry, who played the cab driver in M. Also, that's a fairly recognizable character.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of Castillo's hoods in 1932's Scarface, and he was an extra in the nightclub in 1960's Ocean 11 with the Rat Pack. So he's been in 3 movies that we've covered up to this point. Jack Perry.
Damn.
Now, the next 5 I'm going to mention were all extras in the mob at the end of M, in the Kangaroo Court.
Alrighty.
So, keep that in mind. Hank Mann, who was the janitor at the stag party in 1932's Scarface.
Oh, that guy.
One of our favorite characters in that movie.
Yeah.
John
What do you know?
John Indrisano, who was a Texan in Ocean's 11, 1960. This
All
is
right.
this is IMDb's wording, not mine. John
Okay.
George as a midget in Ocean's 11, 1960.
Okay.
Bob Perry, who was a boxing referee in 1937's A Star is Born. And Harry Wilson, who was one of the Winkies outside of the Wicked Witch of the West's castle in 1939's The Wizard of Oz.
What? Okay.
So, what was that about? What?
All right. Whatever.
I mean, I understand. It's not like you could tell. They got makeup on, they got big coats and the big hats, so...
Right.
They might as well just be mannequins, but they're people.
You gotta get those extra credits.
Yep. Spin them around Hollywood. But that's it for Full Circle. So where do you want to take us so that I can take a drink of water?
Well, I mean, I'm happy to have, to finally see another, to be able to do a German film in this, because I've actually been a decent fan of, and like, I guess, I can't remember if Nosferatu was German or not.
It is.
Either that or like, oh, it is? Okay, thank you.
I'm pretty sure it is. It's definitely German expressionism.
But, I've actually really liked German expressionism. Just the kind of style of it. Just like, it's a style. It's interesting to see just how literally dark all of these movies are. And it's just how it just quintessentially German they all feel.
Yeah.
It's just how very intense all they are. All of these movies end up being, just like on their own. It's just like compared to American media, and it's even kind of cool seeing that done in the modern age. Like our friend group has joked about the movie The Babadook before, but I ended up seeing it. It's like it's actually meant to emulate a lot of that old German expressionism, and I actually really enjoyed it.
No, the Babadook itself is like straight up Nosferatu or Cabinet of Dr. Caligari creation, like bent into weird shapes. And
yeah, it's like how a lot of it's meant to
hair.
a lot of it's meant to reflect like a mental state rather than just it being like a physical threat. It's also mental.
Yeah,
It's like the Babadook itself is meant to be like, dealing with past trauma and that sort of thing.
yeah. Which the movie does a very, very good job of getting that message across up until the end, I would say, where it seems like she's actually feeding it in her basement, and that makes it kind of more real.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's Babadook cast. Yeah. But I know, I know what you're getting.
But like,
at.
It's like it kind of like even just the way they kind of wrap things up. It's like it kind of reminds me even of M. Like it's a very almost before its time kind of message that they're pulling with this one, because the whole point of it is modern day. I'm sure we're kind of sick and tired at this point of there are so many different shows or movies that center around clearly mentally ill serial killer being bent on hell and destruction and that sort of thing. Things between like CSI, Criminal Minds, Bones, that sort of thing. But seeing this in a 1931 film, 31?
Yeah, 31 and 51. They're 20 years apart.
I was just confused for a second. But just to see it all the way back in 1931 and to see it actually done pretty even-handedly. Like in most cases, like if this were wholly American, if the story were wholly American, the main serial killer would not have been shown to be as human as he ends up being. Like he's obviously like a monster for what he does, but he's also shown to be like he's literally compelled to do these things because of mental illness rather than he's just a literal monster. And I was like, I saw them doing that and I was like, oh, this is actually a very, I mean, hell, I think I've seen this exact episode on TV shows before, like in the modern age. It's impressive that they did this. And I was just kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, if it was originally an American feature too, back in the 30s, like the early 30s, I think the message would be completely different, because the message in both of these films is less about the killer and more about how far society takes things. Like, that's the whole point of the lawyer scene at the end, is to try to juxtapose like the crime that's being committed against society's ravenous bloodlust for revenge at any given time.
Yeah. And of course, you say that it's like, if this were done in a wholly American context, it's like we saw when it was done in a wholly American context. It's called Scarface.
Yeah, that's true. That was only a year after the original M came out too.
Exactly. It's like, in that age, they would have just made a demon, and they did.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see that. Like, there's so many cool societal layers you get to peel away, which is also interesting to think about, the time period in which this film was made, considering, what was about to happen in Germany.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a little weird when you think about that context. It's like, these deep societal critiques and everything, when it's like, these guys are about to kind of turn this up to the 15th degree, aren't they?
You know what? I should have taken a picture or screen grabbed or something while I was watching it, but when I was watching the original M, there's a scene right after Der Schranker says they'll use the Beggars Union, and it's cutting to the beggars around the city, where there's a girl looking at like mechanical toys in a window, and there's it's like a carousel that tilts around, but instead of like the domed top that a carousel would usually have, it was a Star of David made out of wood planks. And I really wanted to like take a picture and be like, 1931 Germany with this, huh? That's unfortunate.
Yeah,
I think that shop would be closed.
I didn't piece that together, but yeah, that's intense. Like,
yeah.
It's and I can't tell if like this, like, having watched this movie now, it's like whether or not that was almost intentional of the time period. Like, I can't remember exactly when those like major like societal shifts and purges and everything would have started happening in the country, but like whether or not this was actually kind of deliberate, like maybe like Fritz Lang and his like had seen kind of where his country was going, is like, I need to go ahead and make a critique of this just to kind of point this out, and then it ended up being like, prophetic, or if just like, it was more retroactive. It was like, okay, this is what I've seen in my society and I'm going to make it as a reaction.
Right. And it could just be accidental. I don't know. Like, we as Americans, we probably know, even if we don't know the exact date, we know around the time that World War II started, but we can't possibly, like, in Germany, those things were happening for a while. There's rises to power that happened, and underlying social issues, I'm sure, that played into the nation as a whole. So I don't know where that would have come from or how long that persisted, but you're definitely right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I need to brush up on my history of the subject some.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about Lang, but I know from hearing interviews not with him but about him that Peter Lorre, most people say Peter Lorre, but I think it's Peter Lorre. He fled Germany around the time that Hitler was rising to power, and that's why he was in so many American features during that time, like The Maltese Falcon or The Black Cat with Vincent Price. It's because he was in America after that point. He was an American actor because he fled Germany before all the really bad stuff happened.
Yeah, good fortune to him for that.
Yeah, good on him.
Yeah, it's just interesting to think back on it in retrospect, and it's like, from that note, it's like I started thinking about it. It's like, oh, it always seems like whenever we do films where we compare the original to the modern or the more modern, and it's like, oh well, they had this possibly really cool message, but then when they did it modern, it just didn't carry over. But now that I'm thinking about it, it's like 1950s America. It's like that, and the idea of society being quick to knee-jerk react towards perceived threats, actual threats, and the paranoia it can create, and the extent to which both the law, society, and criminals will go to circumvent such paranoia. It's like,
you know what? You're 100.
So yeah, it's like so it's like, so where is Senator McCarthy?
I was about to say you're 100% right. So before we started recording, we were talking about the Blacklist because Howard Da Silva, who plays Inspector Carney in the American M in 1951, I believe was on the Blacklist. He was blacklisted, and for those of you that don't know what the Blacklist was, he was suspected of communist leanings or activity, and therefore people in Hollywood wouldn't hire him anymore. When I brought that up, I was not intending to include it in this discussion because I didn't piece that together, but that's a really good point. We have this message about society flipping out and going crazy and attacking one another based on very minimal evidence towards anything. And the Blacklist started happening not too long after the American version of this movie came out.
Yeah, that's really weird to think about.
It is.
Like, both these movies, like, completely unintentionally, in a sense, one way or the other, ended up being kind of prophetic. Like, in the German sense, like, just in the idea of society at large and just kind of the major paranoid shifts with it. And then with the American one, just the literal, blacklisting of people. It's just, obviously they're completely different degrees and they should in no way be objectively compared, but the idea is the same.
Yeah, that's strange. I think the most strange thing about it is that they happen before what we can consider to be such big events, because them commenting on this problem that persists not just in society but in any group of people, big or small, it's really a mob mentality. And the reason they comment on that is because it persisted when the movies were made, it persisted before they were made, and I'm sure that they knew that it would continue to happen. It's just strange that so soon after both, we have these events that not just reflect what the movies are about, but actually events that affect members of the cast of both films.
It's super heavy.
It's such a strange, interconnected mess.
Yeah. It's just, and I can't imagine, like, the America. I really want to know, like, I wish there was more just outright info and interest in the 1951 version online so I could figure out why precisely it was remade. Because, like, like, on the surface, it's like, it's an interesting story about, what at the time was still kind of a hot subject, the idea of a serial killer. But even still, it's such a different kind of movie to what American media would have been doing, even in the 50s. It's just, it's weird. Like, post World War II, like, they still were making the very, black and white, mentality movies. But to see them do this, I want to know if there really was a genuine, like, someone wanting to bring a message across, like I'm sure Fritz Lang was doing, or if it was just like complete coincidence.
Yeah, I don't know. I gotta admit, I was disappointed when doing research for the 1951 version because, like you said, I could find literally nothing anywhere. I would say 90% of the results that popped up when I searched for it were like film school students reviewing it online saying, it's not as bad as everyone says it is. But I haven't found anyone saying it's bad. I can't even see if it bombed when it came out because there's no metrics for this thing.
Yeah, it's just, it's just so lackluster. It's so weird to see something lacking that much info. Like, compare that to, like, to the 1931 version, which is, lauded over, which with good reason. It's Fritz Lang. But it's just, it's so weird, and like, they had the metric info in the 50s. We've done movies earlier in this in America that were arguably less popular in some ways, but this one just kind of just went on to the altar and died.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm really sort of compelled to try and do more deep diving after this just to see if I can find anything.
Maybe we'll do. Yeah, it's like maybe we'll do a follow up, being like, "Hey, we actually found something."
I'll email Joseph Losey's granddaughter if I have to. I want to know.
Give me something.
Where's
Give
the
me
information?
closure.
I need closure on this movie
Yeah.
from the early 50s.
It's just, yeah. It's and we've talked so much about the societal impact and reflections of society impact on all of these, on both of these films. It's like eventually I will get into like just the distinct like style and feel between the two of them, but it is hard to get beyond that just distinct feeling of this really was a very, like, we've seen movies before that were like very PSA style ones, but this one was like went kind of beyond it. This was just like straight up chastising at the time modern society.
Yeah, it really was. I'm thankful that they didn't turn it into, I guess, a lesson style film. It definitely has a message, but I don't think they did it horribly. I don't think they handled it in a bad way where it was just beating you over the head with it. Maybe they did and I was blind to it, but I mean, maybe the most I can think of is in the 1951 version where they're all watching the television and they're getting the 5 don'ts. Like, don't let your child out of your sight.
Yeah, that one literally was just a PSA on that one.
It really was
interesting concept to do in it, but you like to bring it across. And also, I should say just briefly, there's actually in that shot, there's actually a very brief shot that I really really liked, where it actually showed from the perspective of the like inside the shop window, and you see actually the screen itself is actually reflected on the glass, so you can still watch people's reactions while you actually still see the film being played. And it's
okay.
Like that's actually, I mean, it's very brief, it's like 2 seconds, but it's like I saw that, I was like, oh, that's actually done really well, because like it was clear that in both cases, when you were actually looking at it dead on, you could clearly tell that they put that one in over it, because you could see like people's head kind of clip in, but the video itself is still over the over the person. But then like they flipped it back and it was like they actually did a very convincing reflection of it.
God, the
like
things
in like the 1950s.
The things that we notice, because I literally wrote that down. I think I need to go. I think I need to go back through it for those 2 seconds you were talking about with the reflection, because I didn't see that, but I definitely saw people's reflections being cropped off, since it was just pasted in there. And I was trying to look. I was like, is there anyone that's leaning a little too close? Maybe their hair or part of their head's missing. But I think for the most part they kept that out of the way. Like, stay out of the way of the TV. We got to add that in later. But the reflections, I noticed the reflections were all cropped off.
Yep.
I need to find what you're talking about, though. The good part.
Yeah, it's just like there's just a very brief moment where you actually just see it from the opposite side. It was like, I just thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's.
You know, I feel like this is a good time to bring this up, since we're talking about TVs. I always buy the DVD copies of these, and the M1 is the 1951 version of M is like this knockoff case, and half of it was shattered when I got it. I am not happy with this, but for the 1931 version, it's the Criterion Collection version of M, and one of the options on the main menu is color bars. And I was like, what is that? So I clicked on it. It was 10 seconds of color bars, from TVs when they were tuned to a channel that was off the air for a bit.
Oh,
it was 10 seconds of that, and then the movie started. I was like, what was the point of that? So that was strange. I just wanted to bring that up. And that's the Criterion Collection, too. Why did they do that?
I don't
know. That's like not some knockoff DVD like that.
Like, and they wouldn't have, and they wouldn't
have one I got.
And you can't even do like the, was this you say this was the 31 version that did this?
Yes, the German Fritz Lang.
Yeah, like you can't even make the argument that like that's how it was back in the day, like when things were off the air like that. It's like, no, the color bars thing wasn't a thing until like the 60s, wasn't it?
I don't know.
It's like
I
the fact that there were
right.
colors.
I think you're right. I think earlier instances of that was the Native American in the circle.
Yeah, like it would have just been like the blank slide saying, currently off the air. It's like because they didn't need to have any kind of color calibration like that. That's what the color bars were meant to be.
Yeah, color test. I have to look into that. I don't know when that was introduced, but I think you're right.
Yeah. And like just the fact that there were colors at all, it's like they wouldn't have had that in the 30s version. Why do you have that?
Why would you have that for any movie? It's like you're watching it on TV, right? No, it's not like, no. Really.
Yeah, I'd still have to change the channel.
I don't get it.
Yeah. That's a little weird.
That was a definite sidebar, but I just wanted to bring that up because I do not understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I do, but yeah, I probably will go ahead and just. Do you have any more major points on just kind of the overall implications of it? Because I was probably going to go into like kind of more stuff like individual performances and just kind of just general feel differences between them.
I think we're done with. For the most part, I think we're done with heavy analysis. I think we can get into like differences between them now.
Yeah, it's because like it is kind of interesting. It is very interesting seeing like the difference between at least the perceived, like the public perception of German organized crime versus American organized crime. Like German organized crime is like intense as fuck. It feels like like it doesn't like I'm sure there's some stereotype to be said like about Germans and everything, but it's like we're allowed to make these stereotypes. We're white.
That's true. We don't have any negative implications towards us at all. I mean, yeah, I guess we do, but we can just laugh at it and who cares?
Yeah, it's like we're allowed to poke fun at Europeans. We're weird.
We have all the power.
Yeah, woo. But it's just like all of the German like mob boss characters, I love the hell out of all of them because like the main ringleader type was just like so cut and dry, intense about what he was doing. Like he was wearing like when we first see him, isn't he like wearing black gloves and everything? I think he was.
I remember. I don't know if it was near the end or if it was every time we saw him, but he had a glove on one hand. On his right hand.
I think so. I think it was meant to be like he seemed like he was smoking with that hand, so that may have been it.
Oh, okay.
But even that's just being like, I don't want any of my cigar ash onto my hand. It's like, Jesus Christ. It's just like, and like just all the ones that were presented, like at that big meeting, it's like you had a guy in full military garb who's clearly like an insider in the military or the police. You had a professor type guy who was part of it. It's like it really did show. It's like this really is spreading across all parts of society, and it's actually probably pretty realistic. It's how organized crime probably was, and just comparing that to the American version, which we've made jokes about it before. They're all literally the exact same character. It feels like it's like the main boss guy is kind of the most distinct, but only because he's so just kind of bland.
Yeah, they all really are, with the exception of Langley, which I should have brought this up. I guess that is a pretty big difference. I should have brought this up in the differences portion for the synopses, but the character of the lawyer is treated more as his own character in the American version.
Yeah, like we actually get to see his kind of like his character kind of develop out. Like he's clearly, even when we first get introduced to him, he's being shown in a bar that the police have just raided, but the guy sees him and he's like, oh yeah, that guy used to be an old lawyer, but a good lawyer, but he turned into a drunk and that sort of thing. And it was like, oh, actually some establishment of himself.
Yeah, which I don't hate. I don't hate that he has his own character. It plays into the ending fairly well, I'd say, but it's strange that they made that choice. I'm not sure exactly why they made it. Maybe they saw the original ending, they're like, we could tie this together more. We should have a character that can actually relate to him. Maybe that'll make him even less of a monster. I don't know.
Yeah, I think in the end it was meant to just kind of like definitely to kind of make him relate to it, and also kind of make it easier for him to state his case, because it seemed like in the 31 version, the lawyer they got, it was clearly just meant to be like, we're giving you this guy just to put on airs of this whole trial thing, but we know we're going to hang you no matter what. But in the later one, it was really more, this guy's meant to be avoiding a murder charge, and we're putting up a genuine case, and we're actually, seeing it through as like an actual lawyer, right. And like seeing him actually kind of turn on the mob boss in the end for, actively defending him and actually like making a good point rather than actually attempting to make him get damned by the public.
Well, yeah, I guess that's sort of the point there, is that in the original, it's like, this is a court, you get a lawyer, but it's not going to do you any good. And that is the same thing in the 1951 version. That's the point. Like when the gang first has their meeting before they go out searching for Haro, they have the lawyer practicing his speech to try and make people laugh, and he even says that in the court near the end of the movie. The mob boss is like, "What are you doing? Make them laugh." It's the same thing. They're putting up a lawyer not to actually defend him, but to give off the airs of an actual court case. But in this instance, the lawyer is a more fleshed out character. He actually maybe not sympathizes with the killer, but he can relate to him in some way. So I guess that is a pretty stark difference there. It's the same thing, but with different results.
I'm realizing it might also, this might be a stretch, but it might also just be another societal thing where, like, in the German one, it's just kind of making a statement. It's like, even someone with a genuine case, if they're given just some crappy lawyer, they don't have a chance. It's kind of meant like an admonishment to the legal system. But then in the American one, it's like they didn't want to admonish the legal system, like, the judiciary system of the country. So they're like, this guy, even if he's a criminal, he's still a lawyer, and he still gives this man his due diligence in court and everything. Where it's like,
this is America.
Right.
This is the court system. The court system works. I guess that is the point that they're trying to ring home. It's like, everyone gets a trial. That's how it works. People,
well, it's like
don't insult the government.
What's known isn't gonna. Well, yeah, fair enough. Like, in the end, it might not necessarily be like a counter argument. It might just be genuine thing being like, when they made it, they were genuinely like, no, it's like, we truly believe that the legal system can be used for good. It might just be abused in some cases. So, it could still have a positive message.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't, given the time period.
Given what happened not too long after.
Yeah. I kind of forgot what we were talking about before.
You know what? I don't remember. You were talking about wrapping up. Oh, yeah, I was talking
about the differences with the mobs and everything. Yeah. I definitely did find just the performances by the mob a bit more compelling in the 31 version. If only because they just felt different from what we've seen so many times before, which, like, again, 50s American movies, they were very much just kind of trying to demonize, like, hell, most movies about the mob until, like, well, ever, actually, when you think about it. We're just, like, making these very stock characters meant to just kind of be these generic villains. We wouldn't really see variation of it until, like Goodfellas.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of cool seeing the variations, like the extent that the characters just kind of went through in the German version. They just felt more like actual characters and like actual people. And I think I have the exact opposite thought on the serial killer in both cases. I think the American one was much better.
Right. You know what? I tend to agree with you, except for the very end. I think Lorre does a good job when he's manic and breaking down. I much prefer his speech at the end, but throughout the course of the movie, the movies as a whole, I do think David Wayne gives a better performance. Just the ending. Peter Lorre is so good when he's like screaming and crying. That's like what he's known for.
Yeah.
So.
And even then, like, I definitely do agree with you. Peter Lorre did take it at the end, but even then, like, I still did like Oh, you literally just said his name, but I've
David
forgotten
Wayne.
again. David Wayne, thank you. David Wayne's like breakdown there at the end, like I did still really like that. It did feel like, you know, the genuine like justifications of someone who's clearly just disturbed but hates it. Like, you know, we've seen like in other American movies, we've seen it where like, you know, they're clearly disturbed and they're enjoying the hell out of it. They enjoy being this monstrous character, but then seeing, you know, Wayne's character really break down like that and have not just the kind of generic thing of I have demons in me that compel me to do these things. He literally had this whole thing. It's like I see this horrible world and I feel this compulsion to save people from it, and I only know of one way to do it, and that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, it was also just straight up creepy hearing it. It's like, wow, that's really creepy to think about, because like we still like I said earlier, we have like modern TV shows that tackle that exact plot line, and this happened 50 years ago. Sorry, 70 years ago.
Oh my God, almost 70. Yeah. Jeez.
Oh, Jesus H. I'm old. But yeah, it's freaky to see that, because it's like, wow, this shit's like, it's really like, you know, the idea of a serial killer really has only properly existed for like the last like 150 years maybe at the latest, and just to see this very real mental state all the way back then, it's just kind of eye-opening to see in a way. It's just different to, you know, what you'd normally see in that day and age for the main villain.
And what you're talking about with actors in general, I agree. I think the mob as a whole was better in the 31 version. I can't really compare the lawyers at all because one of them was not really a character at all. I like Luther Adler's performance in the 1951 version, but it really is its own thing. There's not much of a comparison to be made, because a character was like created for him with personality and everything. And I don't know, for the most part, I think that the 31 cast was better. Like, I like Howard Da Silva's take on Inspector Kearney, but I think I like Wernicke's take on Inspector Lohman better.
Yeah,
I like a lot of those
I gotta
cases,
agree on you.
But the one thing I'll say, I think that the extras in the American version are a lot better than the extras in the German version, and I don't know if that's because they don't really have extras in Germany, or they didn't have extras in Germany, so they just pulled in random people. I don't know what the deal was there, but all the extras, like civilians and stuff, they were so stilted in everything they said. At times, it really took me out of it.
Yeah, they're really, I gotta like look in. I've never really known just the extent of the film industry in Germany, but I really don't think they had any kind of organization for having extras and everything. So it must have just been like either family members or just literally just putting up a poster outside the studio being like, hey, you want to be featured in a film for a few minutes?
Yeah, that's probably what it was.
You know, and I'm sure, you know, positing Fritz Lang probably drew a few people. Like, you know, the dude was decently well known. But yeah, it's just, it was, that's definitely a marked difference. And, you know, I think just so much of all my complaints, I'm just trying to weed through them and think, is this because I genuinely thought the acting in the American version was better in certain cases, or is it just because I find it easier to follow because they're Americans and they're speaking my language? Literally.
That can be a hard line to draw at times.
Yeah, but then I think back on it, I'm like, no, I like in the moments of, even in a different language, there were performances that I found way more compelling in the German version than I did in the American one. I was like, okay, no, it really is just cases where it just is just kind of bad.
Yeah, I think we're being fair here, but by default, when you are a foreigner, when you're, okay, I shouldn't say foreigner, when you're like us, we're both American, and we're watching a foreign film with a language we don't understand, automatically, it's sad to say, we're not getting the full experience. Because I know for a fact I'm missing story beats, really minor story beats, or I'm missing a facial expression here and there because I have to read the subtitles, which I would rather read the subtitles and listen to the original audio because that's the full experience. But the ironic twist with that is that I'm automatically missing other parts of that experience. So there's a fine line that we have to draw where it's like, are we really getting the full experience here? Do we really like this actor over this one? Did we get fully what they were doing? But I think that we try to be as fair as possible, and that we maybe tug the line here and there to try and even it out. So maybe compensating in this area or that area so that we give the most, the purest take that we can possibly give for a film that we don't know the language of.
Yeah, and it's just, and even to that extent, it just kind of speaks to the quality of the filmmaking, where even when that's the case, we do find something compelling and interesting to watch. And it's hard to be able to defend, aspects in the 51 version when, like, I just didn't, I just, like, I don't know what it is about a lot of older American films like that, especially the ones that are very steeped in more crime mentality or crime, centric stories and everything. They just so often get so bland feeling. Like, all, like, the characters that, like, all the mob characters, a lot of the police characters, and all of the civilian characters, each respectively feel all the same to each other. It's just, I've never been able to kind of get out of that funk,
Yeah, I do know. And that's the thing I wonder too. I guess maybe I didn't do enough research on the 31 version, but like I mentioned in the intro, M is considered Fritz Lang's magnum opus. Not by everyone. I think a lot of people would consider Metropolis, like you said, but according to Fritz Lang himself, he considers that M to be his masterwork. So I want to know how the film actually performed in its day when it came out to, like you said, to warrant a remake 20 years after the fact. Because we've been doing this show for a little over a year now, and I think the best instances of a remake are when you take a film that maybe didn't do so hot, or maybe it almost worked but there were some flaws, and then you try to fix them. Maybe you fail in other areas, maybe some of the actors aren't as good as they were in the original picture, whatever it may be, but you're trying to fix something that didn't work out the first time. I think that's the best instance of that. But with M, I don't see a lot of problems. I mean,
I think in the end, as with many of the foreign films turned American films we've seen, I think the big problem someone saw is that it wasn't American.
I guess that's what it breaks down to.
Yeah,
that really is the most obvious pull.
And I think, when I think about it, another good reason could have been the fact that, we talked about it. It came out in a very hotbed time in history. It might not have gotten its due diligence that it kind of deserved, and someone decided, you know what, this story didn't get a lot of traction. Maybe if I do it, it will.
You know what? That's a good point. You know what? This is a really good story. Do you think we should bring it over here? What, are you crazy? It's German. Let's just do it ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
You see what's happening over there?
The sad fact of it, yeah. Like, like once it hit the 1950s, it's not, you see what's happening over there. It's more, you see what happened over there. It's like, yeah, I was there. Many of us were.
I was right over there.
Yeah, it's like, and obviously this is all just theorization, and it's probably very on the surface, kind of very knee-jerk, like, speculation with this sort of thing. But, like, that is a potential of why it happened. Like, it could have been not necessarily suppressed, but that's the problem. I haven't been able to find a whole lot of trivia really on either of these movies. And so I'd need to do more looking into it just to see if that may have been the case. Like, it's just, I see, like, on IMDb, it had a limited release in the United States, but it doesn't really say much more than that.
Does it even say when?
Well, hang on, let me double check.
Well, while you're checking for that, I'm gonna cut to something.
March 14th, 1931.
40.
That was the opening weekend.
Did you say 41?
31.
Oh, okay. So the year it came out. Okay. Well, I guess it wasn't problematic then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was going to bring up a difference that's pretty minor. It's not really based in what we're talking about, but it is a difference. Have you seen the posters for both of these movies?
Just like on the IMDb.
I don't know what the images are on the IMDb, but there's
the IMDb one. It has just someone's hand with like the guy's hand with the M drawn on it, and for the 31 version, and the 51 version, it's like kind of just that classic American style where it's just kind of a cavalcade of imagery where it's got the giant M in the front, but it's got like the main villain like sneering behind it, and there's like a little girl laying, like a little doll or something laying like what looks like a spotlight or something. It's got the tagline, "The most gripping motion picture you've ever seen" at the top of it.
Yeah, it has like clues on the side like a tin flute, a toy balloon.
Right.
Like, yeah. I really hate the 1951 poster for this movie.
It's the one that's on here. It's pretty dumb.
It's just a collage of nonsense, but I love the 31 poster, and this was my first time seeing both of these films. I have seen that poster for a very long time. I've known about the existence of M for a very long time because of that poster. I don't know when it was. I think I saw it on the internet a long time ago, or maybe it was in a book about film, but it's like stuck with me. That poster, I love it.
It's very striking.
It's striking, but it's also simple at the same time, and it ties back into the plot without being a bunch of images that are connected via 10-minute segments.
Right.
A melancholy melody. Yeah, you could call it that.
It's like, the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because like I'm thinking of this poster versus like, Avengers Endgame poster or like any Avengers poster where it's just all of the fucking characters just standing there. It's like a bunch of like flash effects and everything where it's like, huh, we really do not change in this country, do we?
Yeah, we've evolved to the point where it's either posters are either a group photo or it's like extremely simplistic, one character with like words above their head, or a picture of a cube and then below it says the box. That's what we do. It's either too simple with no meaning, or it's way too complicated with like stuff all over the place. And I think that sort of spawned from Drew Struzan, though. I think he did it better, and he painted all his stuff, so he didn't have to use a computer.
But yeah, like, just the simplicity, like, and even like, and simplistic doesn't have to be bad though. Like clearly with the 31 poster, it's just incredible looking. Just how like that really is just kind of what I'm really realizing with this whole thing. It's like, say what you want about the 31 version, it might be kind of overly dark, and it might just be kind of, odd and just like the cultural differences, but it is just striking in so many ways. Like the character presentations, the dialogue, everything. It just kind of hits you,
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's very snappy.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, when I was talking about the posters, like with that one, it is simplistic, but it has importance to the plot, even though you don't know it until over halfway through the movie when it actually becomes part of the plot. But it's also so striking because of the way it's made. Work went into that. It's not just a drawing of a hand with M. It's painted in a specific way. There's lighting to it. There's intense shadows in the darkness, a very stark red M, as opposed to if it was today, it would probably just be a photo of someone's hand with M scrawled on it in Sharpie. I don't know. Well, actually, it would either be that or it would be a giant poster with the killer looking one way and then all the mob bosses and cops on either side surrounding him.
It's like John Wick.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just, and like, it really did just take me a second for me to realize, like, I was like, man, it's really interesting how this movie was just so striking feeling. And I realized this is the guy that made Metropolis. It's like,
Yeah.
no shit. It's like this guy's like Fritz Lang is a genius, and it's a visual masterpiece.
What was I expecting?
Yeah, it's like it's so weird just thinking about it because like I've seen Metropolis, I've seen many other German films, that variety, like very striking visuals, and just moments are very characteristic of German expressionism especially, and it's so weird just seeing the different subject matter because this is a very very grounded subject by comparison, and it was like, oh yeah, no, this is still cutting to the core, and Fritz Lang himself said this was his best work, and I was like, you know what, that's honorable. It's like that means that this is what he was always wanted to properly do. So it's really cool to see how that shaped up.
Right. I like Metropolis too. It has striking visuals, especially for the time it was made in. But if I would change one thing, I would make it an hour and a half shorter.
Oh my God, yes! Holy hell!
I think M accomplishes that.
Yeah, M did that. M did the whole societal message thing without it being a fucking slog to get through. My God.
Yeah.
And just like it's just all of that, comparing it back to the 51 version, where it didn't. I think like the main reason a lot of people just don't remember the 51 version is just it's kind of drab when you get right down to it. There's not a whole lot going on. Like, I mean, obviously it's still interesting to have the entire idea of this serial killer hunt, but even in the end they're not just demonizing him. It's not a whole lot to talk about with it, really.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever brought it up on the show before. I can't remember if I have, but I've always thought black and white films do so much more with lighting than most color films because it's easier. Like, they may not even be trying to go for intense shadows, say, in the 31 version of M, but just on the merit that it's in black and white, it's a lot easier to get that feel. So at least in my opinion, I think that lends a lot to how starkly dark it is.
Yeah. It's and which is even interesting, like, because there were colors per se in Metropolis, but it was more the idea of like they had like a what was the method back in the day? I think they just did like a colored piece of glass they put over the camera.
They used a filter like that. I know in some cases it was glass. I don't know if it was always the same material, but that's all it was.
Yeah.
They did the same thing in The Thief of Baghdad when he was going through the trials.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And like even thinking about that, it's like even seeing those, like even those, the lighting didn't feel as good,
Yeah.
He just and I'm sure Lang was pretty dang good at it by then, so he definitely knew the tips and tricks of it. Because even the American one, it's like it felt pretty straightforward. It felt about the same quality lighting as like Scarface, despite the 20-year difference. Like it looks pretty much more or less the same.
Right, and you run the risk of that, I think, when you make a direct remake. When you make a movie that is so similar to the source material, it's like, well, what are you improving upon then?
God, I can't wait to do Psycho.
What do you... Shot for Shot Town?
The shot for shot remake of Psycho.
Well, I hate Vince Vaughn, so I can't wait.
Yeah. I almost don't know if we should even do that one. It's going to be too easy.
I wonder how long it took for Psycho 2 to come out. Maybe we could just do the sequel.
Yeah. Let's just do the Bates Motel.
The TV show with Freddie Highmore?
Yeah, it's awful.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I watched that for like a season and a half when it came out.
Yeah, I hated it.
Just stopped.
Yeah, it sucked.
We're derailing this quickly.
Yeah, sorry.
Do you have any other thoughts on this?
I mean,
we've covered most of the ground that I think that we can get to. I mean, we can't even compare scores because the 31 version, with the exception of In the Hall of the Mountain King, doesn't use a lot of music either.
Yeah.
Which I guess lends to suspense. I haven't really thought about it. if it plays into it at all.
I think it may have just been like technical problems of the day. Like, you see that we've seen that with a few of our older films that we've seen, but there just isn't a whole lot of just usage of diegetic sound in older films. Or wait, no, non-diegetic sound.
Yeah, diegetic is in the context of the film.
Yeah, like non-diegetic stuff, it's just like whether or not it was just difficult to put it over, with any kind of precision or not. But it just, I think, because considering just the powerhouse of music that Lang did, in his silent films, it may have just not have been as feasible. But yeah, like you really can't even, I wouldn't even consider fucking, in the Hall of the Mountain King at that point. It was just like, he's just whistling it.
Yeah. Though at least I knew what that was. I didn't know what that Pied Piper thing that he was doing was.
I searched so goddamn hard to try and figure out what that song was, and I couldn't find it anywhere.
I think they just gave it to him. They were like, play some notes.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
He's a lunatic. He doesn't have to be a savant.
Yeah, he kind of lended himself to his character with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and I really did want to like more aspects of the American one, because I liked, different tiny aspects of it. Like, the idea that they kind of touch on major gambling problems that were rampant in America of the day. Like, that was a major thing that mobs did. Like, instead of beggars being their info source, they actually had like bookies and money runners around the town that they would give bribes out to. Like, I thought that concept was kind of cool, but it was just like, it just kind of in the end still felt like a pretty generic old American film. Yeah. Compared to just the performances and overall style of the 31 version.
I feel you. Though I do have to say one thing that I really did like. I think I've said a few things that I liked, like the extras, but one thing that I preferred in the American version over the German version, I liked the office building scene more, where they were running around in it, because it felt more chaotic.
Yeah,
they both did the same thing, but I think the American version got the point across better, because they showed more shots of people breaking into places, and they'd steal things, and there were two characters that were caught instead of just one. One was like drinking and falling asleep, and the other one was in the hole. I felt like there was more going on, so it lent itself to the idea of a chaotic ransacking.
Plus the classic comedic moment of guy steps out of essentially a blind corner just to face straight into the police, and is like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
that one got a chuckle out of me. That's a classic. But yeah, beyond that, it's just it's hard. It's one of the few times in where it's style over substance tends in this kind of film. Yeah, it is. That's actually is weird to think about. In such a very grounded film, in the end, it was still style over substance that really kind of gripped me, because they did a whole bunch of technical and more police work style stuff in the 51 version, and there were obviously aspects of it in the 31 version, like we see where he was writing the letter because of impressions in the wood and that sort of thing, but it felt more like, it definitely felt like there were like more like actual detectives and everything going on, and like the raids and everything with the police work in the 51 version. But in the end, it just kind of made it more dull.
Yeah, though it didn't necessarily have more substance, but it had more build-up. The German version, it has
true.
It has 28 minutes on the length of the American version, and that's because they take way more time to build it up. And I don't know if that's a plus or not.
Yeah, like
because it took longer to get to that point.
I really did. I did have that thought, actually. Now that I think back on it, I was like, in the 51 version, where I was just like, wow, they already figured it out? Okay.
Man, they're going. They want to get this movie done with.
They got real lucky with that, finding that one guy in particular.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't have anything else to say on it. I think we covered our bases pretty well, and I think we've given pros and cons to both, but I think that both of our choices obvious at this point.
Yeah, gotta Gotta love Erlang. Just a good old classic of the, classic movies.
Yeah, my favorite this week was Ernest Goes to Camp.
And mine was Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah, of course. Ernest kills a child in Berlin.
It's the comedic Ed Gein story of 51.
Well,
God.
Add it remade on Twitter. They remade it at gmail.com. We're on, I don't know, Podbay, iTunes, Google Play. I don't know why I said Podbay first. Podomatic, Podbean. There's lots of pods out there.
I do love Podomatic. That's just a lovely word.
It really is. I think Podbean is not my favorite, but it's the one that sticks out to me the most. Like, what does that mean? Isn't a bean a pod already? But
it's intriguing. You must go see it. Go find us.
Yes, but we're on all those. Feel free to leave us a review. Tell us how we're doing. Tell us what movie you want us to cover. Do you really want us to talk about the Casablanca sequel? Maybe.
Someone's gotta.
And email us with anything you want. And something else. They remade it on Instagram. We got some people there. So, I mean, that's it. That's the wrap.
Yeah, I've quite enjoyed this one.
Oh, I did too. I had a great time. I'm looking forward to the next one as well. Which is something I cannot currently remember. Woohoo! We'll talk about it after the show. Yay! Hooray! It's a surprise for everyone. All right. Well, as always, I am your host, Stuart. And I'm your host, Jacob. And hope you enjoyed. And auf Wiedersehen, I suppose. Bye.